Hi, I'm Ember Conley, your host for Political Peaks. I'm joined today with the mayor of Park City, Andy Beerman. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ember. Good to see you.
Awesome. So you just ended a very busy week and you have another one that you've started. So last week you had a retreat and it looks like you had three big priorities that the council took a look at with social equity and affordability, authentic local culture, and environmental leadership. What are some big highlights if you could, give us the elevator speech?
Yeah, and actually, there's a fourth on there, which is transportation innovation.
Oh,
So,
okay. Thank you.
all together, it spells SEAT, which is our new motto, which is where everyone gets a seat at the table.
I
Which
love
is,
it.
yeah, talking about I would say that's an aspirational statement, and that we're trying to really expand our diversity and inclusion and get more voices. So, yeah, those should all sound fairly familiar in terms of that we're calling them pillars now, but really they're very similar to the critical priorities we had in place. We're sort of doing some merging and broadening, but the first category with affordability, housing is going to be a key component of that. So much that we're going to have two task forces there, one working on the equity element and the other working on the housing. The one element that environment, I think it's well documented, all the work we're doing on climate change right now, exciting stuff. A lot of that is moving forward well, and we just need to keep our feet on the gas. But the authentic local culture is the one that's a head scratcher for some folks. And the way I describe that is those are all the things that keep Park City Park City. That used to be our old mantra. And so you're talking about historic character, small town feel, sense of community, arts and culture, all those things that drive to make us a real town, a complete community, and unique is going to fall under that category. And part of that, I think, at the heart of the challenge right now is how do we achieve better balance in our community? And so during the Vision 2020, we talked about sustainable tourism, and that's going to fall under that authentic local culture.
Interesting. You hit on a really interesting piece, and that's, having a seat at the table. And I know that the councils come under fire around some of the public process, specifically with the arts and culture district.
Yeah.
What were some of the takeaways in just increasing participation?
Yeah, that's a tough one because we've so dramatically increased participation. When people disagree with a project, there can't be enough participation. I think you know that from your prior roles
Yes,
that
I do.
that often when people disagree with don't like the outcome, they disagree with how you got there. But that being said, I think we can always do better. We're always looking for new channels and new ways to reach out there and appeal to different groups, to bring in dissenting voices. And some of the things I think we've done this year that I'm really proud of, one, and this was forced by COVID, is we've gone digital on everything. And as we've
Love
come out,
it.
yeah, and we had tremendous participation. I would say we would probably have 3 or 4 times normal participation when we went digital versus in
Yeah.
person. So going forward, we've put the technology in place that in most circumstances we can continue to do hybrid. So we hope that engages more people, and it's frankly a lower barrier to entry. But something else we've done is almost all of our communications now, all of our written communications, our websites and that, we have Spanish versions. So since, probably 20 to 30% of our population is Spanish speaking, we're trying to be more inclusive there. And we've even added a weekly roundtable that's entirely in Spanish. And that sees tremendous use, as well as the Spanish Facebook site.
That's
So
fantastic.
yeah, so we're working on it. And to the critics, I would say we always want to do better. Our whole job is to get out there and to communicate and to engage. And we feel like we've failed at our job when we're accused of that. But I'll also say just because you don't get your way doesn't mean you weren't heard. Sometimes that's a fallacy.
Yeah, and I agreed that that's always such a hard place to try to make sure that there's equal and, equitable participation. I know that you have also a busy council meeting coming up this evening or this afternoon. A couple of big ticket items that I'm interested in, and I know that our listeners would be as well, is some of the analysis of the city-owned land. What exactly is this analysis, and why are you looking at it right now?
It's a great question. It's teeing up for the housing conversation later in the discussion. So once a year, I think it's by state statute, we look at all the city properties. We have to basically put them on a list, a real estate list, and then line out what our intentions are. Are they for sale? Are they planned for public works? Are they planned for open space? And so that's part of the annual process. But right now, council has said what pieces of land are available to do housing projects, what's appropriate for housing. So I believe today the land analysis is in that context, that later in the meeting we're going to talk about some alternative locations that either the city can build on, or we can either land bank and give to partners, or do public-private partnerships.
We spoke with Tom Fisher earlier today, and we talked about transportation. And I see that it's something that the council is continuing to look at, specifically for summer. It looks like you have a lot more events planned.
Yeah, we're going to be ramping things up again this summer as it gets more back to normal. I think we've had a couple of big events cancel. So the good news is, for those that feel like have too many events, it'll be a better mix this year than last year when we had none, and next year where we'll probably have yet more. Transportation, we're in an interesting place. We are in a separation with the county. I call it a mindful uncoupling. We're all feeling very good about it in terms of it's Park City started our transit district back in the 70s, and we were the only game in the region for many, many years. But about 10 years ago, Summit County started getting very interested in having a lot more routes out to the county, and they came up with new taxes and new funding, and they became a much larger partner in that transit district, where previously they were just kind of writing us a check to run a few buses. They became a full partner that was dictating a lot of the growth in the district. And we realized they were a little bit frustrated because they wanted to do more out in the county and we didn't have the resource for it. And we realized that this had grown to be the biggest department in the city. We had 100 employees. It was tens of millions of dollars. And the reality was, all of our emphasis was providing these routes out in the county to areas that we think are really difficult and expensive to provide transit. So the county wasn't thrilled with how we were doing it. They wanted more control. We weren't thrilled with how much of our time it was taking up. And we said, why don't we just decouple here? You are the appropriate party to be the regional transit provider. So routes that go out to the east side, routes that go to Salt Lake, routes that go to the Wasatch County, the county will now oversee those, and we'll focus on residents and tourists and workforce in the core of town here. And that allows us to downsize our transit department, but also to scale. Like, now we can start looking at microtransit. We can start looking at like Sprinter van kind of small buses that go into our neighborhoods. We can look at aerial. All these things that we didn't have the bandwidth because we were trying to be a regional transit provider, we can now circle back and focus on. And the county has control over their routes, and they can do them the way exactly how they want them and not be worried about us not having the resources to provide it. So I think it's a win across the board, and I'm excited about the doors it's going to open for us. And on the plus side, something I'm particularly excited about, it's given us the opportunity to take a step back and realize that there is probably nothing we do in this community that is as beloved or as good of an investment as trails and walkability. And we have really gotten away from that because we've been so focused on buses and BRT and regional routes. And we're going to circle back and we're going to focus on making the town more connected, making it fun to get around, active transportation, building out the rail trail, putting in new tunnels, bridges, bike paths, trails. And that's something I'm super excited about.
That is exciting. Well, no, I think it's super exciting, especially when we see that our events are coming back. And I know that your events also recognize the council's priorities or your pillars around social equity and diversity. And I know that the Pride activities are on the list tonight for the council, as well as, of course, our beloved 4th of July, our Park Silly Market. So are there any other great events that you want to share with our listeners?
Well, I will mention we're coming up, since you brought it up, on Pride Month. And so we've recently formed a new task force at the city, an internal task force, our LGBTQIA plus task force. And they are looking at ways to work better with our queer community up here and involve them and plan activities. And Pride Month is their first big launch. And they have developed a new flag, and the flag includes the trans colors and our BIPOC colors to represent more of our citizens. And yesterday we actually, it's kind of funny, I'm out of town on June 1st, so I had asked, they wanted, my plan was I was going to hang a flag and we were going to do a photo shoot, and it turned into a party. We actually, Utah Pride Center sent up a bunch of folks, citizens. We told about it. Our task force showed up, and we had about 40 people yesterday there for the flag raising, which was much more fun than me just showing up for a photo. So we got to.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Are any of
Well,
those photos on your social media?
they are. They are. We've
Awesome.
got both
Okay.
the city and I personally put them up there, and it was quite a crowd, and it was just really fun. And I think one of the things we just can't take, we've got a lot of work we need to do on our equity front, and we can't take any of our groups for granted. We really need to give everybody a voice, and I think Pride Month is a great excuse to give a new voice to our LGBTQIA plus community.
Well, and I think, the conversation continues that, this whole idea of diversity isn't just race, right?
Yeah.
That there's so many other facets of diversity. Andy, it's always such a pleasure to have you, and we just want to say thank you. We know that this was a quick time commitment for you, so thank you for joining us.
Always happy to come in, Ember. You take care.
I'm Ember Conley, your host for Political Peaks. Remember to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Park City TV, over the air on Channel 36 and our Comcast Channel 17 and 102.